Sequel number 6, Church of Uganda at 150. Today, we are looking at ministry being spread by the first missionaries, but basically let's us look today at the disasters of the year 1882. The missionaries who had accompanied the other two missionaries to Mombasa were a group of young men, the first to be baptized at Natete. So when they were still at the coast, a party of other missionaries arrived, and these included James Hannington. He was a priest at that time, and James Hannington and his men were coming into the interior of East Africa, and most likely all the way to Uganda, although they couldn't reach. So they went as far as Ujiji. Ujiji is towards the other western side of Tanganyika, on Lake Tanganyika. So the Reverend Hannington's group were unable to proceed because when they arrived at Ukerewe, they got infected by dysentery, a fever of dysentery, and they felt that Reverend Ashe and Gordon, who were there to pick them up, could not actually take them to Buganda. They were so ill, they decided that they would rather spend their energy on the way back to the coast and back to England. So that is what they call the first journey of the Reverend James Hannington as a priest, not yet consecrated a bishop. So he ever came to Ujiji, but he was unable to continue up to Buganda, so he returned. That was one of the first tragedies of 1882. Then in the palace of Muteesa, there was an epidemic, and he lost his sons. Prince Junju died. Prince Ruswata also died due to that plague. And as if that was not enough, there was also a shooting incident because the Arabs had brought guns, and Prince Mawanda was having fun with a gun with his younger brother, and Prince Mawanda and Prince Rashid Karema. They were playing around with a gun, and the gun fired, and Prince Mawanda was killed. And yet, this Prince Mawanda was the favorite to Muteesa, and Muteesa had intimated that he wanted Mawanda to succeed him. So now Mawanda dies, and Muteesa is in a terrible fear. So he orders one of the princes called Mwanga to be taken to his elder brother Chiwewa Mutebi at Bunamwaya to grow up there in safe custody. So Mwanga left to live with his elder brother Chiwewa Mutebi at the Bunamwaya Palace. So that was the tragedy of the palace in 1882, which was then later followed by the death of Muteesa's foster mother, Muganzi Rwazza. Why foster? She was not the biological mother. The biological mother had been exiled into Zanzibar, married into the royal family of Zanzibar as a punishment for things he did that did not please Suna, the king at that time, Suna II, and therefore she was exiled. Now, later on, as a queen mother in Zanzibar itself, she wanted to return because apparently at that time she had two sons on the throne, Muteesa in Buganda and also the prince or the king, the sultan in Zanzibar, at one time was her son. And then she decided to make a state visit to Buganda, but she died at sea, or as some historians argue, she was killed at sea by Muganzi Rwazza forces, who did not want competition by a biological mother when the whole of Buganda knew that Muganzi Rwazza was the mother, as the Baganda were never told that she was a foster mother. They thought she was biological, just as many today still argue and believe that she was biological, but she was not. So she died in 1882, and there was a very big funeral, and Mackay became more and more favored by Muteesa because of what he did. He made a wooden box, what we call a coffin today. And it was the first time that Buganda saw a person being buried in a coffin. And it was such an honor for the Queen Mother to be buried that way. Then, because of the failure of the Roman Catholic priests to give correct medicine to the Kabaka, who was unwell at that time, the Kabaka, on the advice of his sorcerer Prime Minister Katikkiro Mukasa, expelled the Roman Catholic missionaries. Yes, they were expelled. They left Buganda, they went to Tanganyika, and they even went further away from Lake Victoria into the interior, and they stayed away for almost 2 years. So in their absence, the Arabs continued to give treatment to the Kabaka, and the Protestants continued to give treatment to the Kabaka, but the ailment refused to go. And in October of 1884, Muteesa succumbed and died. So the man who had written an advertisement inviting Christians missionaries, the man who had welcomed the Christian missionaries, the man who himself appeared confused. Was he a Muslim? Was he a Christian? Was he a sorcerer? He seemed very confused. But despite all that, history records he's the one who wrote to invite Christian teachers. And when they came, he welcomed them. And the only problem is that for the Roman Catholics, they would record that at the time of his death, he had no relationship with them. But that doesn't matter. He had relationship with the Anglican Communion missionaries, and therefore he was still friendly to the Christian missionaries. There is no evidence that he was ever baptized. There is no evidence that he was ever confirmed. There is no evidence that he was ever given Holy Communion. There is absolutely no evidence on that. Therefore, he remains a man who died confused, not knowing where to go. But that is between him and his God. And on Judgment Day, maybe we will know more about his fate. But for now, he dies in October 1884 and is buried and is succeeded by his 18-year-old son, who he had taken 2 years earlier into the safe custody of the elder brother. And you see, the elder brother Chiwewa, by tradition, he was not allowed to ascend the throne. He's very protected. So the Chiwewa could not, but the chosen one was crowned the new Kabaka of Buganda at only 18 years. Something interesting. When he was at the palace of his elder brother, there were 2 pages in the palace of Kiwewa, one called Waswa and one called Kato. They used to go to Nalukolongo. Sorry, not Nalukolongo. They used to go to Rubia, Kasubi Rubia, for religious instructions of the Roman Catholic Church. And they would return to the palace. Now, when the missionary society, when the white fathers were expelled into Tanganyika, the Africans who had been trained continued teaching the Roman Catholic liturgy or catechism. And therefore, Waswa and Kato were able, on return to the palace, to also give what they have learned from Rubia to Mwanga. So Mwanga got Roman Catholic catechism lessons through Waswa and Kato inside the palace. And that is why some historians allege that Mwanga was more of a Roman Catholic than an Anglican, although at death he was baptized. Before death, he was baptized as an Anglican, and when he was actually buried, he was buried as an Anglican. But throughout his life, as we shall see in future sequels, he was more lenient and more leaning towards Roman Catholicism. And the reason is this: the people who instructed him in religion were fellow natives who were being instructed at Lubya. And so Mwanga ascends the throne. And when he ascends the throne, things are going to happen. But these things that will happen, we shall see them in the 7th sequel that ends our first week of these sequels. It is my hope that as we go through this history, a few things are being learned. Mistakes that were made, for us, we should not be able to make them, because history should be able to teach us and avoid such mistakes. And it is my hope that as we celebrate this history of our church and our people and our early Christians, we shall be able to pick one or two things from here and there that will make us grow, not only today, but also for the church in the future. And that is the end of today's sequel.